How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another video. This is the $100 Amazon camping gear challenge. Stick around. Okay, so I came up with this idea because I have a lot of trips planned for this year with family and friends. Most of them are beginners, have a little bit of experience, and there are a lot of people that are going to be going on these trips with me that don't really have the equipment to go camping. So I got on this idea to pick a few items that were budget, but really usable and reusable. I didn't want to pick anything that was just cheap for the sake of being able to obtain the item, but it didn't really do anybody any good because it was junk and it didn't last. So I got to thinking about all the different challenges you see on YouTube and across social media, and I thought something that would be pretty fun to do is set a budget and pick some core items for camping and see how they did. And the rules were pretty simple. The first rule was you only had $100 to spend. The idea behind that was the average person these days doesn't have a lot of money, but you may want to get outside, and you might want to do it with more than one person. The first thing you had to come up with within that $100 range was a shelter. Now, that could be anything, and that's really up to you. If you felt like sleeping with the bugs in the summertime, you could just do a basic tarp, and that could constitute your shelter, and you'd still fall within the rules of this challenge. On average, most of us don't want to do that though. So in my $100 budget, I set out to buy a tent. My tent was the very first thing that I purchased, which I'm sitting in here. And I think I spent about $34, $35. I'll put the exact numbers on the screen for this being my first item. So you had to get a shelter. The next thing that you had to get was a sleeping bag or warmth. Sleeping bags aren't in the rules. You had to be able to provide warmth for at least one user. So you needed a shelter, you needed warmth, and number 3 was a sleeping pad, because that's an important part of being warm when you go camping. So that's it. You've got $100. You need to come up with a shelter, you need to come up with a sleep system, and you need to come up with a sleeping pad.
Okay, so right off the bat, I was pretty happy with the way that the tent packs up. Although we know it's not going to go back in this bag, most likely. It was pretty nice to see that, care was taken for some nice packaging. Setup of the tent seemed fairly easy. You have a stake bag and your pole bag, your rain fly, and then your inner. Your inner is, less expensive material, but seems like it would get the job done. Setup, like I said, was extremely easy. I just staked out the 4 corners and then inserted the fiberglass tent poles in order to stand the tent up. Something significant about this tent is the no-see-um mesh basically being, floor to ceiling. So it provides a lot of ventilation, which you don't see very often on an inexpensive tent, and it can be nice to have in the warmer months and even in the winter months when, condensation can build up. This helps minimize that. Plus, if it's a nice night, you can provide yourself with a pretty nice view. The tent measures 83 inches by 50 inches, and the peak is 40 inches. So that's a considerable amount of room, and that is due to the angled poles at the top corners. You can see probably like a 45-degree bend or so at them, and that props up the ceiling a little bit, so you get a little bit more room to sit up inside. I strongly prefer tents with clips on them versus sleeves all the way down. Generally speaking, the clips you find on the nicer, more high-end tents, it's just a little bit easier to set up. And I wish that they would have taken the clips all the way up, but this isn't too bad. It's pretty easy to set up. As you can see, plenty of ventilation and plenty of space for a pretty good view. Altogether, the tent weighs 4.6 pounds, packs up pretty easily, and can fit more than one sleeping pad in. So I always call these 1.5 person tents, but if you wanted to fit 2 people in this thing, you pretty much could. And as you can see, it is pretty well taped from the factory, so you shouldn't have any water leaking on your seams, and I didn't experience that myself. The rainfly attaches to the corners with basically stretchy cordage and clips, so it's easy to set on there. And then you have to stake out the vestibule, and then around the other side you stake out that side as well. The other side's a little bit smaller and does not have a door, so we've only got one door in this tent that does require staking out. There are 4 guy points on each corner too. I chose not to do them for this video as it's not really necessary. The zippers operate pretty sweet on this tent. It wasn't too bad for an inexpensive tent. The door can roll up and you can stow it with a toggle and, you know, have some shelter and increased wind protection, but still be able to see out if you choose to do that. There's plenty of space getting inside this thing, and you could pretty much easily fit a pack and maybe your boots on the inside of the vestibule.
I'm pretty excited about the inside of this thing, I'm not gonna lie. I'm sure I'll get laughed at by the community of hardcore campers on YouTube, but I don't know, first thing right out of the gate, the tent was pretty cool and pretty attractive to me. Nicely packed in a little bag. You know, you get what you pay for, certainly with tents, but sometimes it's possible to find a decent buy, and I think I might have done that with this thing, hopefully. And I don't want to speak too soon. We'll see how it holds up to a rain test and everything like that. So, but the inside of it's roomy. It's a 2-person tent. It's sub 5 pounds. It was 4 pounds and some change. I will put the weight statistics up on the screen here, which I was really surprised at. It does have the typical old school fiberglass poles, you know, so that's kind of a downside, but when you pay, you know, $30-something for a tent, $35, $39, you really can expect tremendous results. But I think that this tent so far is, I'm really excited about it. I like the colors, it's really easy to set up, and I really dig the no-seam mesh. So I'll show you here, there's a little lantern hook. That's what they call that little thing there. You can obviously use it for whatever you like. There's a hook here. I'm not really sure what this guy is right here. But like I said, all kinds of ventilation. It's all mesh all the way around. So I'm pretty excited about that. There's a little gear pocket, looks like here. So you can stick your phone in there. The corners look like they're reinforced. Another little gear pocket on this side. You know, because you want to be sleeping nut to butt when you have 2 people in a tent. The zippers, I mean, I love the freaking colors. And the zippers easily, one hand to operate. The downside, so far one of the biggest negatives for me is the fact that it only has one door. So if you're camping with a family member, it could be a pain in the butt to, you know, crawl over somebody. But that's one of the reasons why they were able to save a little bit of weight with this tent. I'm pretty surprised actually at its weight and its ease of setup and everything like that. So the downside, you got one door, you got one entry, so you have to keep that in mind when you set it up. So you've got to face it the way that you want to get in and out of the tent. There's only one vestibule. It's small-ish. You can fit a pack under it if you're solo camping, maybe your boots or something like that. There's some space on the other side here, but very little bits of space on that side, and you don't have a door, so it doesn't really do a whole lot of good. But if you're solo camping, or you know, you're a parent and you want to take your kid camping, so far so good. Cost, weight, size, everything's great. Ease of setup. So we're gonna go ahead and see if we can put some water to it. I missed my window yesterday. There was a crazy storm I wanted to have it set up for, but I just didn't have the time. So we'll go ahead and see if we can get a hose on this thing, get a water test going, and see how she does. Just like that, I think I figured out what that little toggle was for, the clip. I think you can hold back the mesh door with it.
The sleeping pad I chose was made by a brand named Outplea, as you can see. It's clearly one of those inexpensive mass-produced pads that's probably from Alibaba or AliExpress and company's brand. But it was $19.99, and as a kicker, it came with a pillow that strongly resembled a Trekology pillow. So I thought it was a pretty good buy, and it helped me get in under the $100 mark. The valve is pretty typical. The material is nylon, so it's not too bad. It's 75 inches approximately long and 26 inches wide, and weighs about 1.8 pounds. I didn't use my little flex tail here to fill it. And, it only took a minute or so. It'd probably take you 3 or 4 minutes if you were using, if you're self-inflating it with your mouth. As I said, it came with the pillow, which was a huge plus, and one of the reasons why I went with this brand, despite being a pretty inexpensive, not really well-known brand on Amazon, I was able to spend 20 bucks and get a sleeping pad and a pillow, so I decided to go with it. And like I said, recognized the pillow technology, so I thought, hey, it might be a pretty safe buy. The strap is great too for fixing your pillow to your sleeping pad. It helps keep it from sliding around if you're a rough sleeper and you move around a lot. It shouldn't be a surprise that the sleeping bag is not exactly groundbreaking. I went with an old Coleman, pretty classic design. It was $33. It has a 40-degree rating. That's the lower limit rating. So it has a range of 40 degrees to 60 degrees, so pretty easily you could be comfortable, in my opinion, around 50 degrees, which is great for this time of year. It's long and can accommodate the average size adult pretty comfortably.
Let's see. It's not too bad, actually. Not touching the ground. Sleeping on your back, you should be okay. It's a little comfy. If you're a side sleeper, seems to be alright. Not too bad. The question is whether or not this inexpensive mattress will, I say mattress, sleeping pad will hold air. The Coleman bag is just the old classic sort of cotton inner material, that we all had when we were kids. But the temperature rating is pretty good, so 40 to 60 degree range. So I would say pretty safely 50 degrees. Great for a summer bag, spring bag. Springtime right now, and I'm kind of warm in it. So I'd say that, it fits an adult in it. I think the height limit was about 6 feet. So if you're a tall guy, probably not going to work. But for me, so far so good with my $100 camping setup. I could use this stuff. The catcher would be whether or not the sleeping pad holds air and holds up. It's pretty thin. And whether or not the tent keeps water out. But we'll see here in a little bit. Chose the sleeping pad, aside from its cost, was the fact that it came with a pillow, and I recognized that pillow. If you've ever used any of Trekology's products, it looks identical to a Trekology pillow. Now the valve might be a little bit different or less expensive, but it looks pretty identical, and a lot of people trust Trekology products. I use them myself. The pad's a little thin, but I've seen others like it. It's almost like a shower curtain-y material. It's not the greatest, but it was fairly comfortable. The Coleman bag is pretty nice. Little spot for your cell phone or other devices. And like I said, 40 to 60 degree rating was pretty good. Your zipper's great so far. Seems to be a pretty snag-free design. They even have these little toggles in order to roll the thing up and toggle it as you go and tie it as you go. It's supposed to be pretty easy to bundle this thing up. One of the other features about this bag that's kind of neat is that you can connect it to a second bag and have, one large bag if you want to camp and cuddle with a significant other. Maybe you want to play big spoon or little spoon. That's none of my business, but you can do it with this Coleman bag like you can do with most classic Coleman products. So that's it. These are the items I chose for my $100 camping gear challenge. The only thing left to be seen is whether or not this tent will keep water out, and we're going to figure that out before the end of this video. So in order to rain test this tent, we're going to take a page out of a gentleman by the name of Spackman's book. I don't know if you've ever seen his videos. His channel's Adventures with Spackman. He's kind of nuts, and I really dig it. It's funny. So this is how he tests his tents, and I think it's a great idea. If you see the video, buddy, thanks. I watch pretty much all of his Amazon reviews, and it's a pretty solid setup, because very rarely do you ever get a steady downpour of rain on a tent in the wild to the extent of a hose directly pointed at it. So what we're going to try to do is sort of replicate how he tests his tents, because I set this tent up, like I said, I missed the storm, and I've got probably another week until it rains again, hopefully. So that being said, I can't leave this here for a week and wait for it to rain, so we're going to make it rain. Alright, so let's see what we got here. This is how we are going to torture test this tent. It's a little bit less primitive than the setup that he uses, but I think it'll work. I've taken my GoPro off the tripod, so you're going to have to excuse the rubbing noises on the mic. But it actually makes a pretty solid rainmaker. I have one of these little twisty ties here. We have the head of the hose on there, and I can make some adjustments up and down if I need to. And she's pointing at that old girl right there. We're going to crack the water on, see if we can get this to stand up straight, and if we do, we're going to let it rain on the tent for 10 minutes, and then we're going to check the inside. Alright everybody, it's been 10 solid minutes of that hose pouring water onto that tent, so we're going to cut the water off, and we're going to see what the inside looks like and see how dry it is. Pretty anxious to see the results. Let's just check the outside and see if it's damp or there's any sag in it at all. So the water, they have a pretty good coating on there, it looks like. The water was beating off pretty effectively. It doesn't look like there was really any absorption. That's a word, right? Absorption. Don't think it absorbed much water, if any. Let's see the inside. Okay, it's starting to get a little bit dark, so hopefully you guys can see. There's a little bit of water on the bag here, and so far I don't see any. Sorry, it's getting dark. None in any of the corners or anywhere else for that matter. And even on the bag, it was a very small amount, and I believe that is due to the hole here in the rain fly. I'll show you what I mean. I think that maybe I had a little bit too much of an angle, and I actually have some water underneath this part of the fly, so I wonder if, I believe some water kind of was getting tossed up in there. But other than that, there's nothing. And I'm gonna I'll do a confirmation. I'll test it again, but I am fairly certain that I probably had a little bit too much oomph on the water there, and we had some going up in that opening, and even then it was a small amount that collected, so it was probably when I was moving it around. But I would say that was a pretty successful test, and I'd feel pretty comfortable using this thing myself. So I'm going to go ahead and say that for $100, I've managed to pick out a pretty decent budget camping set to get you started. So let's take another look at it here. We've got a 2-person tent that weighs less than 5 pounds. In fact, it weighs less than some of my nicer tents that are designed for 2-person and are considered backpacking tents. It's pretty nice. I like the colors. I love the fact that it's all mesh. It comes taped from the factory, and I would say is very effective at keeping out water. At the time of this video, it was $39.99 on Amazon. Then we have our sleeping pad, which was $19.99 and also came with a pillow. Last but not least, we have our Coleman bag with a 40 to 60 degree rating. Alright everybody, that's it. I'm going to wrap this video up at this point. Obviously, actual use is more important than doing some backyard rain tests, because technically speaking, we don't really know how the mattress feels. I did just lay on it for a short period of time. The reason why I wanted to break this up into 2 videos is because this is a procedure that I do for tents and my equipment before I head out, regardless of whether or not I'm doing some sort of an Amazon challenge. So I needed to test this stuff out before I went out and used it. So that seems like a good time to me to talk about, the numbers and how much did it cost and what's it made out of and will it keep you dry. So that's why I decided to break it up into 2 videos. Got any ideas from this video? Give the video a thumbs up, and if you have any questions about any of the items in the video, drop a comment below, and if you have any suggestions, drop a comment below. The links for all of these items will be in the description as usual, and what I'm going to do is take this stuff out into the field and use it a few times, and then post a video and review its use and let you know. That way you can get some sort of an idea if you're still on the fence whether or not it'll be a good purchase. You'll be able to figure it out hopefully from that video. So I hope you got something out of this video, and it gave you some ideas and showed you that you can get started without spending a whole lot of money. Now, if you watch the video all the way to the end, thanks for hanging out. Hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell, so when the review for this stuff comes out, you'll get notified and you'll be able to watch it. Also, I did say that this was an Amazon challenge, so what we're going to do here is we're going to tag some other channels in the description below. So stay tuned for that. See who I tag in the description and check out his channel and watch his video. Alright guys, let's go. Let's get outside.